The Plantagenet dynasty emerged from the Norman lineage, specifically through the marriage of Geoffrey Plantagenet, Count of Anjou, and Empress Matilda, the daughter of King Henry I of England, who was from the House of Normandy. It began its rule over England in the 12th century with Henry II, who was the first king from this lineage. The dynasty's name is derived from Geoffrey Plantagenet, Count of Anjou, who was known for wearing a sprig of broom henna in his hat. Henry II. Henry II became King of England on December 19, 1154, following the tumultuous reign of Stephen of Blois. His ascension fulfilled the claims of his mother, Empress Matilda, who was the daughter of Henry I. Henry II's rise marked the beginning of the Plantagenet dynasty and a significant shift in the political landscape of England. Henry II significantly expanded his territories, establishing what is known as the Angevin Empire, which included vast lands in France, such as Normandy, Anjou, Maine, and Aquitaine. This expansion solidified his power and influence across both England and continental Europe. Henry II implemented crucial legal reforms that laid the groundwork for English common law. Key aspects of these reforms included jury system. In civil disputes, jurors were called upon to act based on their personal knowledge of local issues. A jury typically consisted of 12 freemen who could decide a wide range of disputes, including but not limited to issues related to recent possession and inheritance claims, mort d'ancestor, and unlawful seizure. Novel decision. This system allowed juries to arbitrate various civil matters rather than limiting their scope. Justices in air. He established justices who traveled, heirs, to hear cases in various regions, thereby increasing royal control over justice. Criminal cases. In criminal matters, jurors named neighbors they suspected of serious offenses like murder or robbery before royal judges. However, many accused individuals were never apprehended. Assize of Clarendon. This ordinance established a procedure for criminal justice and introduced the grand jury system, consisting of local men who informed itinerant judges about serious crimes in their districts. These reforms aimed to standardize legal practices and ensure that justice was more accessible throughout his kingdom. Conflict with Thomas Becket. One of the most notable events during Henry's reign was his conflict with Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Initially friends, their relationship soured when Becket opposed Henry's attempts to assert royal authority over the church. The conflict escalated over issues such as the jurisdiction of ecclesiastical courts and the rights of clergy. In 1164, Henry sought to limit church power through the constitutions of Clarendon, which Becket refused to accept. The dispute culminated in Becket's murder in Canterbury Cathedral in December 1170 by knights loyal to Henry, who misinterpreted his words expressing frustration over Becket's defiance. This act led to widespread outrage and backlash against Henry, forcing him to publicly repent for his role in Becket's death. Henry II died on July 6, 1189, at Chinon Castle in France. His death was attributed to natural causes, possibly exacerbated by years of stress from political conflicts and family strife. Following his death, he was succeeded by his son Richard I. Richard the Lionheart, marking a continuation of Plantagenet rule. Richard I, known as Richard the Lionheart, became King of England on July 6, 1189, following the death of his father, Henry II. As the third son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine, Richard was not initially expected to inherit the throne. However, the deaths of his elder brothers paved the way for his ascension. His reign began amidst a backdrop of familial conflict and rebellion against his father. The Third Crusade, from 1189 to 1192. Richard is best known for his leadership during the Third Crusade, which aimed to reclaim Jerusalem from Saladin. He set out with Philip II of France and achieved several military successes. Upon arriving in Sicily, Richard occupied the city of Messina after a series of conflicts with its ruler, Tancred of Lecce. This occupation was partly due to Tancred holding Richard's sister Joanna captive and refusing to return her dowry. Richard's forces clashed with local citizens, leading to significant unrest and violence in the city. After leaving Sicily, Richard's fleet was blown off course and encountered difficulties with Isaac Komnenos, the self-proclaimed ruler of Cyprus. In response to Isaac's refusal to return stolen goods and prisoners, Richard invaded Cyprus and successfully captured the island. During this campaign, he also married Berengaria of Navarre, further solidifying political alliances. Captured Acre in July 1191. after a prolonged siege. Defeated Saladin's forces at the Battle of Arsuf in September 1191. Although he reached an agreement with Saladin to allow Christian pilgrims safe passage to Jerusalem, he ultimately failed to capture the city itself. Marriage to Berengaria of Navarre. During his journey to the Holy Land, Richard married Berengaria, the daughter of Sonko VI of Navarre. Their marriage took place in Cyprus after Richard defeated its ruler, Isaac II Comnenus, who had mistreated Richard's shipwrecked crew. Imprisonment and ransom. On his return journey from the Crusade in late 1192, Richard was captured by Duke Leopold of Austria and handed over to Emperor Henry VI. A substantial ransom was demanded for his release, which amounted to a significant portion of England's income. After being imprisoned for over a year, he was finally freed in March 1194. Campaigns in France. After his release, Richard spent most of his remaining reign engaged in military campaigns against King Philip II of France. He focused on consolidating and defending his territories in Normandy and Aquitaine. Richard I died on April 6, 1199 from a crossbow wound sustained while besieging the castle of Chalais-Chabrol in France. The injury led to gangrene, and despite ordering the archer who shot him to be pardoned and rewarded, Richard succumbed to his wounds shortly thereafter. He was buried at Fontevraud Abbey in France. Following his death, he was succeeded by his younger brother John. John, known as John Lackland, became King of England on April 6, 1199, following the death of his brother Richard I. As the youngest son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine, John was not initially expected to inherit the throne. However, with Richard's death and no heirs, John seized the opportunity to claim the crown. Loss of Normandy. John's reign was marked by significant territorial losses. In 1204, he lost the Duchy of Normandy and most of his other French lands to King Philip II of France, leading to the collapse of the Angevin Empire. This loss weakened John's position and financial resources. Conflict with the barons. John's heavy taxation and autocratic rule led to widespread discontent among the barons. His treatment of nobles, including the execution of his nephew Prince Arthur, further alienated potential allies. Magna Carta, 1215. In response to baronial rebellion, John was forced to agree to the Magna Carta at Runnymede on June 15, 1215. This document limited royal power and established principles that would influence constitutional law in England. Papal interdict and excommunication. John's dispute with Pope Innocent III over the appointment of the Archbishop of Canterbury led to a papal interdict in 1208, which prohibited church services throughout England. John was excommunicated in 1209, but later reconciled with the Pope in 1213. Civil war and rebellion. Following his refusal to adhere to the terms of Magna Carta, civil war broke out between John's supporters and rebel barons who sought assistance from Prince Louis of France. The conflict resulted in significant territorial losses for John. John died on October 19, 1216, at Newark Castle due to dysentery contracted while on campaign. His death left a power vacuum in England, leading to further instability as his young son, Henry III, ascended to the throne amidst ongoing civil strife. Henry III. Henry III became King of England on October 19, 1216, following the death of his father, King John. At just 9 years old, he ascended the throne during a period of significant turmoil and conflict stemming from his father's unpopular reign and the baronial revolt that led to the signing of the Magna Carta. Regency and early reign. Due to his young age, Henry's early reign was governed by a regency council. The council included notable figures such as William Marshall, who helped stabilize the kingdom and restore order after the civil strife caused by John's rule. Confirmation of the Magna Carta. In 1217, Henry confirmed the Magna Carta, which had been forced upon his father. This document established principles that limited royal authority and emphasized the rule of law, setting a precedent for future governance in England. Treaty of Paris, 1259. A significant event during Henry's reign was the Treaty of Paris, signed on December 4, 1259. This treaty marked a turning point in Anglo-French relations, as Henry acknowledged the loss of the Duchy of Normandy and renounced claims to Maine, Anjou, and Poitou. In exchange, King Louis IX of France recognized Henry as Duke of Aquitaine and agreed to withdraw support for English rebels. This treaty temporarily stabilized relations between England and France but left unresolved tensions that would later contribute to conflicts like the 100 Years' War. Conflict with the barons. As Henry matured, tensions with the barons resurfaced. His attempts to assert royal power and favor certain nobles led to discontent. This culminated in the Second Barons' War, 1264 to 1267, led by Simon de Montfort, who sought to limit the king's powers further. Battle of Lewes, 1264. Henry was defeated at the Battle of Lewes, resulting in Simon de Montfort taking control of the government. This marked a significant shift in power dynamics as Montfort called for a parliament that included commoners, laying early groundwork for a more representative government. De Montfort included commoners mainly to gain broader support and legitimacy, recognizing that taxation and governance decisions should reflect the interest of a wider segment of society. By including knights representing counties and burgesses from towns, he aimed to address the grievances of those who were increasingly burdened by royal taxes yet had no voice in governance. Restoration of authority. After Montfort's death at the Battle of Evesham in 1265, Henry regained control. His reign saw efforts to consolidate power and restore royal authority after years of conflict. Cultural and architectural contributions. Henry III is remembered for his patronage of architecture, notably beginning the reconstruction of Westminster Abbey in the Gothic style. He also promoted arts and culture during his reign. Henry III died on November 16, 1272, at Westminster Palace, likely due to natural causes related to illness. He was succeeded by his son, Edward I, who continued many of his policies and further strengthened royal authority. Henry's reign is often viewed as a transitional period that laid important foundations for the development of parliamentary democracy in England. Edward I, also known as Edward Longshanks and the Hammer of the Scots, became King of England on July 20, 1272. Following the death of his father, Henry III, he was formally crowned on August 19, 1274. As the eldest son of Henry III and Eleanor of Provence, Edward was involved in the political intrigues of his father's reign from an early age. Military campaigns in Wales. Edward's reign began with a focus on consolidating power in Wales. After suppressing minor uprisings, he launched a full-scale invasion in 1277 against Llywelyn ap Griffith, the Welsh leader. Edward defeated Llywelyn and established English rule over Wales, building a series of impressive castles to secure his control. By 1301, his son was named Prince of Wales, a title that continues to this day. Conflict with Scotland. Following the death of the Scottish king, Edward was invited to arbitrate the succession dispute. He asserted feudal suzerainty over Scotland and invaded in 1296 after deposing John Balliol, whom he treated as a puppet ruler. This led to the First Scottish War of Independence, where Edward earned his nickname, Hammer of the Scots, due to his harsh military campaigns against Scottish resistance. Legal reforms and administrative efficiency. Edward I is often referred to as the English Justinian for his contributions to legal reform. He implemented a series of statutes that strengthened royal authority and clarified laws regarding land ownership, trade, and public order. His administration introduced the 100 Rolls, an inquiry into abuses of power by local officials. Development of Parliament. Under Edward's reign, Parliament became more regularized and influential. He convened Parliament approximately 46 times during his 35-year reign, laying the groundwork for a more representative governance structure. His willingness to share power with Parliament stemmed from practical needs for funding, a desire for legitimacy, and an understanding of the changing political landscape in England. Conflict with France. Edward also faced challenges from France. In response to King Philip IV's confiscation of Gascony, 1294, he engaged in military conflict which diverted resources from his campaigns in Scotland. In August 1294, Edward I entered into an alliance with Guy, Count of Flanders, through the Anglo-Flemish Treaty. This agreement aimed to strengthen military cooperation against France during ongoing conflicts. The alliance was part of Edward's broader strategy to secure support from continental allies while dealing with tensions with France. Edward I died on July 7, 1307, at Burgh by Sands near Carlisle, Cumberland. He likely succumbed to dysentery while on campaign against Scotland. His death occurred during a campaign against Scotland, as he was attempting to reassert control over the region. Following his death, he was succeeded by his son Edward II, whose reign would face significant challenges stemming from the conflicts initiated during Edward I's rule. Edward II became King of England on July 7, 1307, following the death of his father, Edward I. His ascension was marked by the challenges of living up to his father's legacy, particularly in maintaining control over Wales and Scotland. Conflict with Scotland. Edward II's reign was significantly defined by ongoing conflicts with Scotland. After the death of William Wallace, a key figure in the Scottish Wars of Independence, Edward II faced resistance from Scottish leaders like Robert the Bruce. In 1314, Edward suffered a major defeat at the Battle of Bannockburn, where his forces were decisively routed by Bruce's army. This defeat weakened English control over Scotland and emboldened Scottish independence efforts. Favoritism and court politics. Edward II's reign was marred by accusations of favoritism towards certain nobles, particularly Piers Gaveston, his close companion. Gaveston's influence and the king's perceived neglect of noble interests led to discontent among the barons, culminating in a rebellion led by Hugh Despenser and others against Gaveston. In response to growing discontent, the Ordinances of 1311 were enacted. These regulations aimed to limit the king's power by stipulating that only Parliament could declare war, allow the king to leave the country, distribute royal lands, and appoint chief officials. The ordinances were a direct response to the perceived mismanagement and favoritism in Edward's court. Loss of control. Edward II struggled to maintain authority over his kingdom as opposition grew stronger. His reliance on favorites and inability to effectively manage dissent contributed to his declining power. Civil War. From 1321 to 1322. Tensions escalated into civil war between Edward II and a coalition of barons led by Thomas of Lancaster. The conflict resulted in Edward's victory, but it highlighted the instability of his reign and the ongoing struggle between royal authority and baronial power. Hugh Despenser. After Gaveston's execution in 1312, Edward II favored Hugh Despenser the Younger, who became royal chamberlain in 1318. Despenser quickly maneuvered himself into the king's affections and grew increasingly influential. His rise to power caused further alienation among the nobility, as many viewed him as a second Gaveston. Despenser's greed and ambition led to widespread resentment. Household government and patronage. Edward II's reliance on favorites like Gaveston and Despenser exemplified his household government style, which prioritized personal loyalty over traditional noble support. This approach alienated many in the nobility, who felt marginalized by the king's favoritism. Imprisonment and deposition. In 1326, Edward II's wife, Isabella of France, allied with Roger Mortimer, leading a successful invasion against him. By 1327, Edward was captured and forced to abdicate in favor of his son, who became Edward III. He was imprisoned at Berkeley Castle. Following his deposition, they controlled the government until 1330, when Edward III took power. Edward II died under mysterious circumstances on September 21, 1327. Officially reported as having died from natural causes, rumors suggested that he may have been murdered or executed while imprisoned. His death marked the end of a tumultuous reign characterized by military defeats and internal strife. Edward III. Edward III was born on November 13, 1312, and became King of England on February 1, 1327, following the deposition of his father. Edward II, his mother, Queen Isabella, was the daughter of Philip IV of France, which provided Edward with a claim to the French crown. This connection played a significant role in his later ambitions during the 100 Years' War. Consolidation of power. After his ascension, Edward III initially ruled under the influence of Isabella and her lover Roger Mortimer. However, in 1330, he staged a coup against Mortimer to assert his independence and began governing personally. The 100 Years' War. Edward III's reign is most notable for the commencement of the 100 Years' War with France in 1337. The conflict arose from disputes over Gascony and Flanders, as well as Edward's claim to the French crown through his maternal lineage. Key battles during this period included Battle of Crécy, 1346. A decisive English victory demonstrating the effectiveness of longbowmen against French cavalry. Siege of Calais, 1346 to 1347. Following the victory at Crécy, Edward besieged Calais, which became a crucial English port. Battle of Poitiers, 1356. Another major victory where the French King John II was captured. Treaty of Bretigny, 1360. This treaty formally recognized Edward's claim to significant territories in France, effectively granting him control over about 3/4 of the country. In return, Edward renounced his claim to the French crown. French Recovery, 1369 to 1375. Following a period of English dominance, France began to recover much of what had been lost during the war. This resurgence was partly due to new French leadership under Charles V. Domestic politics. In 1376, the Good Parliament convened to address grievances against royal favoritism and corruption. The Parliament led to the impeachment of several royal officials and highlighted growing tensions between the monarchy and Parliament. Justice of the Peace. Edward III expanded the role of Justices of the Peace (JPs), enhancing local governance and law enforcement throughout England. JP were appointed to maintain peace in specific areas and were responsible for handling minor crimes and civil cases. By granting them greater authority, Edward ensured that local governments could effectively enforce laws and maintain public order. This system allowed for more independent local governance, reducing direct influence from powerful nobles and promoting legal enforcement within communities. War state. Edward III's reign saw the establishment of a war state, where military needs significantly influenced governance and policy decisions. The king's patronage and love for tournaments fostered positive relations with the political community. Edward III fell ill in September 1376 and briefly recovered in February 1377. He died of a stroke at Sheen Palace on June 21, 1377. His death marked the end of a long and significant reign characterized by military successes and challenges. With his heir apparent, Edward the Black Prince, having died shortly before him in June 1376, Edward III was succeeded by his 10-year-old grandson, Richard II. Richard II. Richard II was born on January 6, 1367, in Bordeaux, France. He was the son of Edward the Black Prince and Joan, Countess of Kent. Following the death of his father in 1376, Richard became the heir apparent to his grandfather, Edward III. Upon Edward III's death in 1377, Richard ascended to the throne at the age of 10. Exalted idea of kingship. Richard II held a lofty view of kingship, often referring to himself as Your Majesty. He believed in the divine right of kings and sought to establish a strong royal authority. The Peasants' Revolt, 1381. One of Richard's most significant challenges came when he faced the Peasants' Revolt, which was sparked by high taxes and social unrest. At just 14 years old, Richard bravely met with rebel leaders including Wat Tyler and promised reforms. However, after the revolt was suppressed, he revoked those promises and dealt harshly with its leaders. Uncle John of Gaunt. Richard's uncle, John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, played a significant role in his early reign. Gaunt's influence was a source of concern for Richard as he sought to assert his independence from noble control. Henry Bolingbroke's exile. In 1398, Richard banished his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, the future Henry IV, from England for 10 years due to political tensions. This decision would have significant repercussions for Richard's reign. Death of John of Gaunt, 1399. When John of Gaunt died in February 1399, Richard seized his lands and titles, further alienating Bolingbroke and other nobles. Bolingbroke's coup. In July 1399. While Richard was in Ireland attempting to consolidate power there, Bolingbroke returned to England with support from discontented nobles. Bolingbroke quickly gained control and forced Richard to abdicate on September 30, 1399. Richard II was imprisoned in the Tower of London after his abdication. He died under mysterious circumstances in February 1400 at Pontefract Castle. While it is widely believed that he was murdered on the orders of Henry IV or his supporters, the exact cause of his death remains uncertain. Richard II's reign is often viewed as a tragic tale of lost potential. Although he displayed promise early on, particularly during the Peasants' Revolt, his later arbitrary rule alienated many nobles and ultimately led to his downfall. His attempts at consolidating power and establishing a strong monarchy were undermined by factional conflicts within the nobility. The Plantagenet dynasty ruled England from 1154 to 1399, encompassing several notable kings, including Henry II, Richard I the Lionheart, John Lackland, Henry III, Edward I, Edward II, Edward III, and Richard II. This dynasty is recognized for its significant impact on English history, marked by transformative events and changes. The Plantagenets presided over the Hundred Years' War 1337 to 1453 against France, which began under Edward III. This prolonged conflict not only shaped military tactics and national identity, but also resulted in significant territorial losses for England, altering the political landscape. The signing of the Magna Carta in 1215 during King John's reign marked a crucial moment in limiting royal authority and establishing the principle that everyone, including the king, was subject to the law. This document laid the foundation for constitutional governance in England. The dynasty also witnessed significant legal and administrative reforms, especially under Henry II and Henry III, who organized a more structured legal system and expanded the role of Parliament, laying the groundwork for modern governance. The internal conflicts culminated in the Wars of the Roses, 1455 to 1487. A series of civil wars fought between the houses of Lancaster and York for control of the English throne. This internal strife highlighted deep divisions within the nobility and ultimately led to the decline of Plantagenet power. The Plantagenet dynasty effectively ended with Richard II's deposition in 1399. Following his downfall, Henry Bolingbroke, son of John of Gaunt, a member of the Plantagenet family, returned from exile and claimed the throne as Henry IV. This transition marked the beginning of the House of Lancaster, which would continue to shape English history through subsequent conflicts and changes in leadership. The legacy of the Plantagenets is profound, as their reign shaped not only England's political landscape but also its cultural identity. The struggles and triumphs of this dynasty reflect a complex tapestry of power dynamics that continue to resonate in British history today. In our next video, we will explore the Wars of the Roses, a pivotal series of conflicts between the Lancaster and York families for the English throne. This tumultuous period, which lasted from 1455 to 1485, was marked by significant battles, shifting allegiances, and the rise and fall of powerful figures. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. We look forward to sharing more fascinating historical insights with you. See you next time.